You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to a somber and season-ending episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers fall to the Miami Hurricanes 85-69 in a loss that knocks Indiana out of the NCAA tournament in the round of 32 and ends the illustrious career of Trace Jackson Davis as an Indiana Hoosier. Also ends the career of Race Thompson and Miller Kopp and probably Jalen Hood-Schifino as well. And, you know, this is one of those losses that if you've been paying attention to Indiana basketball closely this year, you know, you want to say that you're surprised and shocked, but unfortunately, I don't know that a lot of us are, because a lot of the things that have plagued Indiana came back to plague Indiana tonight. This hasn't been a team that was good on short rest. They weren't good on short rest tonight. This hasn't been a team that's been good against high-octane offenses with quick penetrating guards, and they weren't tonight. This hasn't been a team that has good rebounding fundamentals. They didn't have them tonight, and Miami attacked them and got into them. And this has been a team that at times forgets what works for it on offense and goes away from Trace and starts taking bad shots. And this has been a team that is up and down and will give up runs and make runs and give up runs. And unfortunately tonight, they gave up the last run there over the last 10 minutes of the second half after really doing some good work to get themselves back into the game after Miami started off so well. But at the end of the day, it was a loss that just felt so familiar, because there have been so many games this season where just certain matchups and certain mentalities that Indiana has brought to the game have just kind of led to this almost powerless feeling and powerless loss that Indiana had tonight. A very, very disappointing way to end a good season for Indiana. I'm your host, Jared Morris. I'm here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, with Andy Bottoms, with Ryan Phillips. We are going to break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start the show the way that we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. And for the banner moment, you know, obviously it's got to be about Trace in his last time as a Hoosier. And, you know, this was not one of Trace's better performances tonight. He was good, but, you know, he wasn't kind of the superhuman Trace that we've seen. And he got burned on box outs and had some issues as well. But, you know, was still the best player on the floor for Indiana and did have a few great stretches of his own. And so I'm going to go back to the first half when Indiana was down 28-15 and things really looked bad. I mean, it looked like it may get away from Indiana early, and we got a stretch from Trace that showed everything that he has displayed this season that has made him such a great player. You know, he got an and one to, you know, kind of settle it down and get some points there. Trey got a steal. He, you know, drove in for a layup, missed it. Trace got a follow-up, and right there, it's 28-20. You know, that was huge. Trace got free throws on the next possession. Then coming down soon after that, Trace found Trey for a three. That ended up making it a 10-0 run. Trace had a huge block shot on the next possession. Now, Miami would kind of go on a little run themselves, but that 10-0 run got Indiana back into the game and kind of settled things down a little bit, and it was Trace doing all the Trace things. He was scoring, he was passing, block shots, rebounding. He's just done that for this Indiana team so much this season. He finishes tonight with 23 points, 8 boards, just that 1 assist, and 5 block shots. Again, it was a good performance from him, not the superhuman performance that we've seen from him at different times this season. But, you know, on a night when obviously Indiana's hopes for a banner ended, that was the best stretch of the game for Indiana's best player in the last game that he will play as an Indiana Hoosier. And, man, those are hard words to get out. Didn't want to have to say them this soon, and I know you didn't want to have to hear them this soon. Okay, let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Homefield Apparel, wear one for the team.
Well, our banner moment tonight, as always, brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel, now in their 6th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call and their 2nd as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. And I have to give the guys at Homefield Apparel credit. You know, they have a great Twitter account, a great just kind of brand identity on Twitter. someone tweeted out a video of how March Madness is just killing productivity for businesses across the country, and Home Field Apparel retweeted it and said, "Not us." And that is true, because no one capitalizes on March Madness and big events like Home Field Apparel. They, signed a licensing deal with Fairleigh Dickinson 2 hours after their victory over Purdue. They've got their really fun Mystery Mania program that they have going on. I already got 2 shirts. A couple more will be coming. And, of course, they released a bunch of awesome shirts for the IU women's team, who is playing tomorrow night at 8 o'clock as they continue their tournament run. I ordered the one with Grace Berger and Mackenzie Holmes on it. I can't wait to get it. I hope it's here in time for their game tomorrow. But Home Field Apparel, they just do such great work. Comfortable fabrics, durable fabrics, and incredible logos that all have a unique story and allow you to show your love for your school or just for a fun design. And so we highly recommend that you go there, homefieldapparel.com. The promo code is HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Drown your sorrows with shopping at homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, not fire up a quick 3, but instead find the open man and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Andy Bottoms, we will go to you first for your bottoms line on this Indiana loss.
I feel like I could probably just talk for about 10 minutes straight in an attempt to process all of the things from this game. I think what you saw in a nutshell was things that have plagued IU so many times this season. The lack of bench production, the lack of shot selection, I guess, at times, and in some cases, the lack of recognition of what was working well. I mean, IU had chipped away slowly but surely after a really, really poor start, and got back in it. Kopp hits that huge 3 at the end of the first half. Felt like they had some momentum. They came out, used that momentum. They made adjustments, got Trace on the short roll, and then got the lead and completely went away from it. Now, that isn't to say that Miami didn't make adjustments, but too often IU had guys just not even make a not good defense by the numbers, didn't make them work a whole lot more often than not. Settled for shots that you could get anytime you wanted to in the possession, and just thought that lack of situational awareness was critical. And really, when Miami went on runs, that was there. The offensive rebounds were just crushing. And I know you have said this before. We talked about it in one of the exhibition games that, some of the rebounding was there. And it wasn't because Miami was big. And yeah, there were some long rebounds mixed in there because they took some bad shots, but boy, you don't give up that many. You don't get beat that bad on the offensive glass by just not getting outworked. And I think that to a certain extent is also the bench. You've got guys who are playing heavy minutes, and I think it speaks a little bit to all the stats from the year about with a lot of rest, this team has played well. On quicker turnarounds, they have not. You got a lot of guys with heavy legs at this point, 2 days later for a team that didn't play a lot of bench guys. And that was one thing Miami did. And they got production out of the people that they put in off the bench. IU didn't. It's a chicken and egg thing of, well, you didn't play. Did you not play them because they didn't play well? I don't really know. I thought Caleb Banks gave a couple good minutes at the end of the first half from a matchup perspective. Felt like he could have offered something because they very clearly wanted to attack Race Thompson coming out in the second half. They put Miller on him and tried to get him to drive him. And he drove Trace at times as well. Just all the things and all the reasons why this team was inconsistent at times during the season. For as many good things as they did, they were inconsistent. And it's why people had a hard time really talking themselves into them making a truly deep tournament run, because at least over the last month or so of the season, they've not shown the ability to string together good performances. Doesn't mean they're incapable, but they didn't show the ability to do it. And that's exactly what you saw over these last 2 games. Played one of their better games of the season, start to finish against Kent State, and then just came out and got absolutely blitzed coming out of the locker room. Miami's aggressiveness really took them aback, and it took them half of the first half to really, truly recover and then get back in the game, kind of relax for a second, and then just get blitzed all over again. And ultimately, I think for as many good things as there were, that was kind of the story of the season, and I guess in some ways maybe a fitting way for it to end.
Yeah, very well said, Andy. Coach, it is Tonsoni time. What is on your mind this evening?
Well, it was just a simple Miami's game plan was better. Miami's execution was better. Miami's effort was better. And we can sit here and point the fingers wherever you would like. And with all our fans, some 800 and some in here, everyone's going to have where they want to point their fingers to it. But it basically comes down to one program played harder and won the game and is still going to play next week. And one team did not play hard and was not prepared in the ways that they need to. So hats off to Jim Larrañaga and the players at Miami. They decided they wanted to play in a certain way, and they dictated that throughout 40 minutes. And short of the only positive is that there were some moments where Indiana fought back and took the lead 50-47. Really was 49-47 because they were going to adjust that. And I just think it was an entire program, airball tonight, disappointing. But, it has, you guys have pointed out, the inconsistencies of playing well and then not playing well within games, from game to game, came up and just reared its ugly head tonight. And when you have a one and done and you drop the ball and it, everyone, we can talk, but Trace Jackson Davis wasn't very good tonight either. He was good, but when you give up 31 second chance points, then he's part of the issue as well. Everyone in the team, in the program, needs to own it a little bit, and then obviously you're going to reflect back and say it was a successful year in year two of a regime getting the program somewhere where it hasn't been. We can't lose sight of that because of this horrible performance. Third in the Big Ten, withstanding a lot of injuries. None of that is going to end. But it sure was not a good way to remember all of the positives that have happened this year. And then the true test is for those players coming back and those portal guys coming in. This is the expectation that we don't get any worse than this, that you keep building the program, and anything less than that is a step backwards. With the roster construction, that's going to be an interesting off-season discussion. But the last thing is, it's a guards game and it's an athlete game, and we were outperformed at the guard position, and our athletes weren't at Miami's athlete level tonight. And so when roster construction comes, that's what Coach Woodson needs to get, those long, lengthy, athletic guys in the program. Nothing against our guys, but it showed up, and it showed up against the Big Ten as well, all the way up and down the Big Ten. Athletes and guards are winning in this tournament, not big guys.
Ryan, over to you.
Yeah, look, and people are going to take this as a shot at Mike Woodson, and it really isn't. But Miami was better coached. That's because Jim Larrañaga is a phenomenal college basketball coach and has been for a long time. I mean, he's one of the best. And the simple fact is Miami was better prepared and better coached tonight. And that's not because Woodson's terrible. It's because Larrañaga is so good. And he's the guy that Woody should strive to be, quite frankly, because his team came in. They knew exactly what Indiana was going to run, and right off the top, we're all over everything Indiana tried to run in that first few minutes. Miami knew. It was like they were calling the plays out. And then offensively, they knew exactly how to attack Indiana. Straight line drives, reverse, get their big guys or bigger guys in Race and Kopp into situations where you can drive them and drive them. Drive by Huchefino. He sometimes comes into games and starts them flat. Drive right by him. And so they knew exactly what they were doing. They were better prepared. They were the better team. The thing that gets me about, and again, you face a Jim Larrañaga team, you might expect that to happen. The thing that gets me and pisses me off is the effort. And Miami wanted this game more. They did. That's what offensive rebounding is, focus and effort. Coach and I talk about it all the time on here. It's focus, knowing you've got to block out and then go get the ball, and effort of blocking that guy out, pushing him around, getting there in front of him, beating him to the ball, and getting it. Indiana got murdered on the defensive glass tonight. Absolutely murdered. And I think it was 26 second chance points for Miami. What'd they win by at the end? That's the game right there. You're allowing them free points just by not playing hard enough. And I know, guys, it's not intentional. Guys aren't lagging on purpose, but it needs to be ingrained into this program that crap doesn't happen. And it's not yet. And it happened last year, and it happened a lot this year. That cannot happen. You can say, well, they were more athletic or they were bigger or they're better offensive. It doesn't matter. It's just effort. That's all it is. And so that's the part of this that really gets me. Miami had a great night. They deserved it. They were the better team by far tonight, in my opinion. The other thing I'll say, and Andy touched on it, is the pattern with this team this year and with the team last year is they would get into situations where they would go on a run by running something and it would work. And they would run it, get a lead, and then for some unknown reason, stop doing it. And tonight it was that short roll with Trace Jackson Davis right out of the half. And Miami adjusted to it. Keep running it until it doesn't work, though, and maybe you can get other things because you were getting wide open three-point shooters or you were getting Trace going to the basket. And then they just stopped, and it became a guards game, and the rolls became straight post-ups for Trace Jackson Davis instead of that short roll to the free throw line, which we have been begging them to do all year. And it's just, why are you going away from it? And then that allowed Miami to get comfortable defensively, which got them comfortable offensively. They took the lead, and they never gave it back. And it's a program-wide problem that you don't instinctively go with what's working. You try and change things. And it's just maddening because this is a team with an All-American point guard, with a first-round draft pick, or All-American center, a first-round draft pick point guard, and some skill guys on the outside who could do things who I thought played pretty well tonight, that you just get your pants beat off by this team. I mean, it's terrible, man. It was a rough game, and most upset I've been about a game this year.
It was. I mean, as we've come on here often and said, look, it's the NCAA tournament, so it is the loss. The loss itself is disappointing. Any loss in the NCAA tournament that is going to be Trace's last game is going to be disappointing, but it's the how that is really disappointing on this one.
You lose a tight game against this team, you're like, you know what, they're a good team. But it was just, it was the decision-making all night was horrible from Indiana, and it's the perfect example, and I texted you guys about this, was, Indiana gets the ball. They're coming up the floor. I think they were down 9. And Tamar has it and Trace has it. And they're the only two guys around the three-point line. Everybody else is still coming up the floor. And Tamar takes the ball, takes 3 dribbles, and takes a long 2 pull-up from 18 feet with 4 Miami guys standing under the basket. And no Indiana guys in there to offensive rebound or mix it up or anything. And he misses, of course. And Miami goes right back down and scores. And it's just like, why would you take that shot? Even in the first half, if it was an even game, you don't take that shot. Like, why on earth are you taking that shot? And that was all night. Jalen was taking terrible shots all night. I mean, it was just the decision-making was awful. And that's, again, program-wide problem because it happens a lot.
Yeah, Tamar finished 0 for 13 in his 2 NCAA tournament games. Coach, go ahead.
The problem is, like we've said this in a lot of losses, the up and down nature of this ball club all season. When it's good, it's been really fun to watch and productive and pulling some wins that we might not have thought. And then in some of these losses, they're just so bad. So the up and down nature of this team, it really wasn't consistent all year long. I think Andy touched on that at the very beginning. And you saw that in play tonight, down, was it 28-15, and then stringing together some defensive stops and some good offense, and then all of a sudden back again. And when you look at some of the wins that Indiana pulled out, the 2 Michigan games, the Illinois game where they won at the end, they didn't play well throughout the whole game. So, this is a pattern. I think Ryan, you might have texted that in our text thing. There is a pattern of play with the Indiana Hoosiers, and you had 2 pros. So if you have 2 talented players and you have a pattern of play, what are you going to do to fix it? And now it needs to be fixed, but you're losing 2 pros. That's the thing that's toughest right now. And I know we're talking about this game tonight, but what happens in a tournament when you can't be up and down in a tournament because you only play 2 games a weekend. You got to win 6 in a row. And so there was some foreshadowing that this was going to happen. You just wanted to make sure that, or hope that you could smooth it out for 2 or 3 games. But this is the way the Indiana basketball program is run. when it's going well and your point guard and your All-American center are scoring 60 points a game, you're going to win and blow out the number one team at Mackey. When it's not, you are going to have a chance of getting beat. That's just the way the program is operated right now. And for 23 games it worked, and for 12 games it didn't. And I would say in some of those wins it didn't work. It's just the athletes were better, or the performances outperformed the system, in my opinion, and that's concerning to me.
Well, and Andy, the thing is, I mean, I think we all, before the Big Ten tournament, we all said the most likely outcome is this team is going to win their first game and lose their second one. They're good on rest. They can come together and play well, but they don't handle that success well. And that's exactly what happened. Play well against Maryland, and then you come out without urgency against Penn State until that flurry at the end. And same thing here. They play terrific against Kent State. And then, in a tougher matchup on, with only a day of rest, they don't against Miami. And look, I think, part of it is, you are behind the eight ball a little bit when your star is a center and when, you're relying on a freshman point guard who is really talented but really inconsistent. And a lot of Indiana's offense is obviously built around Trace, but it also became built around Jalen shooting. And he's an okay shooter, but he's still an inconsistent shooter. And this is where, maybe if you have that experienced point guard like Xavier Johnson, and no one would mistake him for being, consistent. He's inconsistent himself, but that could have helped smooth out some of this stuff. And so I just think when you kind of look at it in hindsight, the way this roster was built and, the way that it came to be after the injuries, you're going to be inconsistent against teams like this because, Trace can't always get himself the ball. And Jalen, for all the high points that he had and as talented as he is, did not play well in the NCAA tournament. He did not play well tonight. He hit those late threes, which was nice and makes his box score look better. But honestly, I thought this was one of his worst games.
It was.
He got popped in the balls on the first play of the game, and it seemed to just totally take him out of the game mentally. Woody sat him, and then he came back in and played a little bit better. But outside of that, he really struggled. And Andy, this team just isn't built to win games against good teams, especially a team like Miami, without Jalen playing at a super high level. And unfortunately, that just wasn't in the cards tonight for anybody.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to the depth question because without him, and he made a second foul the guy on a 3-pointer. Then you got to take him out. You put Tamar in. He really struggled in the NCAA tournament, struggled tonight, struggled with shot selection. I thought played hard defensively at times in the game tonight, but just wasn't able to give a great lift. Trey Galloway had some bad passes, but made some solid hustle plays, made a big three at times. But yeah, they're very reliant on Jalen, and I think he allowed them at times during the season. If you go back to what Coach was talking about, I think one of the, if you want to view this as steps of progression for this team this year, was how many times do we come on and say this is not a team that previous editions of IU teams would have won in recent years, and that's true, and it was, and I think that is a step in the right direction to be able to win some games when you're not playing your best. But more often than not, this team needed to play close to its best. The margin for error was very, very limited. Part of that is style of play. Part of that is not shooting a ton of threes. Part of that is being very heavily reliant on two players. And I thought there were games where Jalen really came out and set the tone and carried this team this year. The Purdue game is the most obvious example. And I thought tonight was almost certainly the worst game that he had. I thought his defense was poor, really struggled to contain dribblers. And I thought that carried over to offense, where he was very willing to take the shot that they were going to give him early in possessions. Made a couple shots where his foot's on the line, just in terms of he's done that a number of times during the year, just the awareness of where you're on the court, just costing points in some places because you're taking such long shots. But I just thought there were too many times, and he was, one of the culprits really in that segment in the second half. They come out, do that short roll, have good luck with it, and then they basically baited him into taking threes. And if those shots go in, it's great, and we're all sitting here talking about what an amazing freshman he is. But those were the shots that they wanted him to take. We talked about that against Kent State the other night. IU forced Kent State defensively to have the guys take the shots that they wanted to take, and force tough shots or long shots that wasn't getting somebody going downhill and going to the rim. and I just thought his decision making was poor as well. And they were doing some things with Trace where it was really difficult to get him the ball. The way they were playing, they were sagging in behind where they're trying to invite you to throw it over the top, but they had a guy behind. It seemed like some opportunities for a high-low. I know Trace one time pointed for Race to get somewhere. They threw a high-low. Trace got fouled. But I do think that's one of the areas that becomes difficult when Jalen's not playing well. You got to find ways to get the ball to Trace. Well, the problem is that Jalen is the guy that you want to get the ball to Trace, and he was all too willing to take bad shots. To me, it was the defense as much as anything, though. I just thought that was one of the things we texted about this before the game. I go, we got to find a way to contain the bounce, and from the word go, did not do that at all. And Miami plays more modern basketball, spread you out, pull Trace away from the rim by having somebody that takes him a little bit further away, drive in behind where there's not shot blockers, or at that point you're scrambling and shot fakes and things like that. It just was just a really poor performance from him. The numbers do not tell the story, because those 3 late threes were pretty huge. He took 14 of IU's 34 shots in the second half. That's not the recipe.
No. Ryan, you're muted.
Sorry. Anytime that
beautiful
Jalen
thing.
Hood-Schifino is taking 22 shots and Trace Jackson Davis is taking 10, that's not a good recipe for Indiana. And it wasn't. I said in the first half, I just said more of TJD, less of JHS. Because he was, first half, he hit those 3 threes late. Andy's right. That makes it look better. He was 2 of 8 in the first half. And the 6 misses, none of them were close. He missed a 3 where it went over the rim.
It was wide. That was wide open too.
Yeah. And he settled too. He had time and he just yanked it. And then the 2 he made were heading towards the basket, going north and south. And he had a layup and he had a floater. Other than that, his jump shot was just off. And then he came out and he hit 2 sort of shorter jumpers to start the second half. That was it though, man. He was terrible. And the problem is, and I get he's a freshman, he's young, he's all these things. And he's had games where he's gone nuclear. When you don't have it and you're a point guard, when you don't have it from a scoring perspective, stop focusing on getting your offense and start running the offense. You will get your shot opportunities through the offense if you do that. What he was doing, and Miller Kopp was going nuts because there were a few times that they got a screen. Miller's guy would help off, and he'd be standing in the corner wide open, and Jalen would be staring at the hoop trying to find his way into the lane. And to some degree, and again, not really blaming the coaches for this because he's been so good, but I feel like he's been trained to do that this year because they've kind of had such a loose leash on him to do whatever he wants with the offense. And again, he's a 5-star. You probably promised that to bring him in, but when the games he doesn't have it, it really hurt Indiana because he didn't have the governor on him to pull back and find other guys. And so that's why he's a point guard who, didn't put up huge assist numbers because it was mostly him either, coming off that screen and roll and pulling up, or he was more of a scoring guard basically this year than a guy to truly run the offense. And whereas X is somebody who's more of a point guard. So I just think that Jalen, especially because he's going to go to the next level, he's got to learn, if you do not have your jump shot, there's other ways you can affect the game. Go to the rim and get fouled, or involve your teammates. Run something to involve your teammates. And he did not do that tonight. Tonight, he was trying to play hero ball. I think he got sucked into the fact that Miami has these guards who are really good and they were playing really well. So he wanted to answer back, and it's immaturity. It's basketball immaturity. And that's what he showed all night. And that's just a recipe for a loss. And to some degree, the coaches got to get on him about that. The coaches have to run the offense. Do not look for your shot. Run the offense. You'll get your shot out of the offense instead of just waiting for one screen and going to shoot. And
Ryan, that is the offense.
You're right,
sorry.
Coach. And that's
the offense is
that's the bad part.
Stare at
You're right.
TJD and space away. The offense is call for a middle ball screen and try to hit TJD. And everyone does that. They're staring at Tamar Bates, forced one into the post. It wasn't even TJD. It was Race.
Renew.
This offense is low post first, ball screen second, not here to get cop shots third. And there are 5 players on the court. And at some point, if they're taking away one, even though you want to go there, and number 2 is not playing well, you got to go into a bag of tricks and try something. And the other thing
and that's why
is,
we've been let me
So
jump in.
Jay, I agree with you on Jalen. He played very, very, very bad. Made very, very poor decisions. Was loose with the basketball. One of his worst performances. I feel sorry for the kid. But tonight was a night when the coaching staff needed to take over and make some adjustments. They were bum rushing at start, and we didn't hit the short roll until the second half. Kudos to coaching staff. They made a nice adjustment to go to the short roll. But after that, they did nothing. There was nothing spectacular.
It was all. It was,
And,
all,
you
it
know,
was like
you
a
got
pickup
Jay.
game.
You got Jay Wright at halftime saying, how much standing is Indiana going to do? Jay Wright, he knows basketball. And he's like, reverse the basketball and attack against teams that are
And he
coming
said,
out and
"Move
pressuring.
players." Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we've been saying that all year long. So you can't sit here and put it on Jalen Hood Schifino that
It's not only
he didn't
him,
run the
yeah.
offense. He is encouraged to take those shots, and somewhat, like you said, rightfully so. But there needs to be a third or a fourth thing to go to in the college game because we're home now. Whether you promised or didn't promise anybody, we lost an embarrassing game because we couldn't get the ball where we wanted to, number one, and number two is really bad. So what are you doing? Let's go to number 3 or 4 and try something. Miller Kopp was heated because every time you reverse, you didn't take the ball screen and drove, his man was coming off and he was wide open in the corner. We did it twice. That's
open.
It's malpractice, to be honest with you.
No, and we
Sorry.
begged all year, find a way to get the other guys involved, especially when you need a bucket. And shut up, guys.
Your little review finger. It's you used to just interrupt. Now you've got to like make sure everybody knows that you have.
Yeah,
a
of
point.
course. No, I meant let's keep going on this. No, it's we begged all year to run one play for Miller Kopp a game, just one play, and to and you see it. Miller was great in the tournament. He was fantastic in the tournament. You get him involved, he's fantastic. We've been begging for it all year. Run a play to get Trey Galloway a straight line drive. He's really good at finishing at the rim. Like they never did that. It was all about two players, and then if they happen to kick out, you might get one of the other guys getting a shot, and or a roll from Race that got him something. That was it. You're right. That was the offense, and it needs
Reverse
to be
the
more
basketball.
Diverse. It needs to
We
be
took-
more. Yeah,
I'm not going to go back and watch this tape.
They have to do that.
But one or two passes, I would say 50 to 60% of our possessions were either one or two passes. Several times we'd come off the ball screen and and then next thing you know, we settled for a 3, and you hear, announcers saying, settle for 3. You can still go into the post. You can still get ball screen action on the side at the top after you've reversed the ball move. I love it when they went to that 3-man weave a little bit up top and then go into a ball screen. But those, I can't remember too many actions. Now, some of that was because they were heavy pressure, but then heavy pressure, you move the ball and you attack. But it was move the ball and stare back inside, and we were just not set up. That's where Larinaga did a great job. He knows that he didn't have a good defensive team. By the way, 112th defensive efficiency coming in, and has totally dominated this offense. And they had to junk it up. I said on the show the other night, they're going to junk it up because they can't guard TJD. And so they're going to put pressure, and that's what Larinaga did, and he is so good at that. But and we didn't do enough to counter it. And I felt sorry for guys like Hood, Schifino, and Bates because I think they're encouraged to make shots. And to them, then I just got to do a pull-up game or shot fake and get to the elbow and shoot instead of attacking with a purpose. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I thought. To tie some of that together and then we can break. I thought they came out of the gate in the game really blitzing IU off the ball screen. But there was the first bucket that IU got in the game. They were able to get out of that pressure, get the ball, then you got the advantage. Once you break that, they had a 3-on-2. Race gets the ball in the lane, kicks it out to Kopp. It doesn't have to be a guard in the middle of the floor making the decision. You made them pay on that one possession for playing defense that aggressively. And you didn't see that at other times then. It was just content to get it out of the trap. But that was just, that's your power forward. Dribbles the ball into the lane, draws a defense, kicks it out to Kopp, who's wide open. And even then, Kopp said, it's there every time. He said it again at halftime. It's there every single time. And, I thought the other thing that I thought Kopp made a couple nice plays in the pick and roll in the second half.
He did.
And it was, I think, in large part because that's not how Miami was going to defend him in that scenario. They wanted to get the ball out of Hood Schifino's hands. They wanted to try to get the ball out of Galloway's hands where they could. Again, as you're thinking, put on your hindsight glasses and go look and see what you would do. Could you have put Kopp in more of those scenarios? Because I thought he passed the ball really well, got the ball to TJD really well. I thought he played a hell of a game, and there's probably lots of moments we can talk to about him, but he played his ass off. And so I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I tell you what, there's one guy who really, over the course of the season, like you had no doubt it mattered to him. Man, he played hard.
Hold that thought.
Andy, you're talking about the ball screen. Just have a lift on the backside of the ball screen trap. That guy's going to tag TJD, and they were bum rushing the short roll hard. They knew they were going to go to TJD, so they sent 2 or 3 guys. They had 2 guys on the ball and 2 guys on Trace Jackson Davis. All you got to do is reverse dribble as the ball handler and hit the wing and then attack. But there was nothing. They were so flat, like they have been all year in the corners, and they stood there. All you got to do is come up to the wing, and it gives an option when that guy's trapped instead of just going to the short roll as well. There were multiple things that could have been done, and they weren't done. It just boggles my mind that those things aren't done at this level.
All right, hold that thought, Andy, what you just said about Miller Kopp, because we're going to talk about him coming up here in Meaningful Moments as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's season-ending loss to Miami. We'll point out tonight's Meaningful Moments you might have missed, talk about a few numbers. I imagine rebounding will come up. That's coming up next on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey guys, it's Gene Steratore, CBS officiating analyst and retired Big Ten basketball official. You know I have never listened to the Assembly Call, and to be honest, I don't intend to. But if you listen, make sure you ignore anything Ryan says about officiating. He's really good from the seat of his pants, but I wouldn't trust him on the court with a whistle around his neck. Time has proven him wrong on virtually everything. Take care. We'll talk soon.
I would pay so much money to see Ryan officiate a college basketball game. Put the whistle on, get out there on the court. Would you be like
Big Ten game?
Okay, but would you be like
the officiating the NCAA tournament's been really good, by the way. I have to say it's been really good. After watching the Big Ten for so long, this is like amazing.
Okay, but did you notice the guy tonight that like over gestured on every call?
Yes, I did.
Would you be like that, or would you be kind of more understated?
I would be subtle.
He's already got the review thing down.
Review it.
There's one thing we know about Ryan.
I'd be
We
the guy
know
who
it's that
throws
he's
you
subtle. So
I'd be the guy who throws people
believe
off,
that
like
at your
pointing
own
to him
risk.
and just doing that. You know, like nah, get out of here.
He'd be over at the review watching, and the lead
By the
official
way,
would be talking, and he'd interrupt. Well, no, I think it's this.
I'd throw Fran out every single game.
Just even before the game starts. Just you're out. Just go. All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. We are laughing because it's better than crying. I'm Jared Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms and the coach Brian Tonsoni. We are breaking down Indiana's season-ending 16-point loss to Miami. I believe the 8th double-digit loss that Indiana suffered this season. And it is the top of segment 2, so it is time to talk about some meaningful moments.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
And tonight's meaningful moments that you might have missed, brought to you, as always, by our friends at Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience IU athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. I saw them tweeting, 4 or 5 hours before this game that they had come up with tickets for the, in Albany for someone who wanted to go. This is just what they do. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, visit HoosierTicketProject.org. That's HoosierTicketProject.org. All right, guys, let's talk meaningful moments. And Andy, I thought you provided a really nice segue at the end of segment 1. There were a lot of bad performances to go around tonight for Indiana. I thought Miller Kopp had one of his best performances as a Hoosier, honestly. It came in a losing effort, but, you go back to what happened at the end of the first half. Again, Indiana had kind of battled back, after that 10-point deficit, but Miami had pushed it right back out to 40-30, and it really felt like this was going to be a double-digit, deficit going into halftime. And Miller Kopp basically just took over the last 90 seconds of the first half. Scoot missed a 3. Miller got a great rebound and then hit a little, turnaround mid-range. I think it was over Nigel Pack, had that size advantage. That made it 40-32. Then, after making that shot, hustles all the way back to the opposite side of the court where he's defending Wong, who is the ACC Player of the Year, and did a commendable job, given the difference in athletic ability. But on that particular play, hustled all the way back, prevented him from shooting. And then you'll remember this is when Caleb Banks came into the game. And so
Great
Banks is
effort.
out there and he's not in the right spot. And Kopp literally goes and pushes him on the butt into the right spot. Banks gets into the right spot. He ends up getting a block on that play. Just incredible leadership, recognizing that a freshman wasn't in the right place and took ownership of it to go push him into the right spot. So Banks gets the block and then goes down on the other end. He goes to the corner. I thought Trey Galloway did a great job of recognizing it, drawing the defense, doing a little spin move, and throwing it out to Kopp for the three. That made it 40-35. It was a tremendous sequence from Miller Kopp. I mean, when Miller Kopp is going to be gone, that's the sequence I'm going to remember because it's shot making. He made 2 shots, but it was such better defense. And for a guy who got criticized so much for his defense all throughout last year, he turned himself into a solid defender because he knew where to be. He played hard. And I think, again, on that play, showing leadership to help support Caleb Banks, I just thought that was huge, and Indiana carried that momentum right into the second half because they played great the first 4 or 5 minutes, to end up taking the lead before everything fell apart. But, Miller Kopp, Andy, to the point that you made there at the end of segment 1, I wish he had more opportunities. And I will tell you this, I'm sure at some point, we'll talk about, so we took that lead at 50-47 and then Kopp got the steal and he pulled up from 3. You could debate whether that was a good shot or not. I had no problem with it because he was playing so hard and he never knows when he's going to get the ball back. And he was open and it's transition. And, again, it led to a string of like 4 or 5 possessions where we stopped getting it to Trace. And so that's not great. But I felt he had earned the right to take that shot because he was just playing so hard. And if you make that shot, it's a 6-point lead and it's a huge momentum thing. So for me, I know some people didn't like that shot. I had absolutely no problem with it, and I thought I was really impressed with what Miller did tonight in a matchup that is not really a good one for him. I thought he did, really as well as he could. And honestly, I wish he had gotten more opportunities on offense.
Yeah,
Didn't they move him to Wong in the second half?
They did.
They made the adjustment and moved him to Wong and did a decent job on that. The shot was fine. If it goes down, that's a momentum boost. He earned it with his defensive play. I had no problem. In retrospect, you kind of wish, maybe pull that back out and get a 5-point lead,
or take another dribble.
Take another, get a step closer. But my goodness, I agree. I think he still struggled a little bit all season long on guarding the bounce, but his effort on even that with attacking his hands and blocking shots and all that stuff. But no, Miller Kopp wasn't the reason tonight at all.
Yeah, I thought even you mentioned that sequence at the end of the first half, Jared. I thought there was at the beginning of the second half. He played really good. Galloway hits that 3 coming out. Kopp played really good defense on the next possession, managed to chase down a rebound and made a really slick outlet pass kind of as he was getting the ball down the sideline to Hood-Schifino, who ended up getting it up to Race for the 2 that tied the game. And then a couple possessions later, Race missed a shot, but Kopp made a really good hustle play, kind of got in, mixed it up. Miami ends up hitting it out of bounds. Yep. And then, I same thing about the shot. I was going to bring that up as well. To me, did not have an issue with the shot. Would say, one, he's leaning toward the hoop as he's done at times during the season where he's not on balance. But I also thought, man, that goes in. And we've talked about that before with this team and their reluctance at times to take 3-point shots and the momentum that can provide or whatever. And you look at that shot and you're thinking, man, if that goes down, that place is going crazy. Miami takes a timeout. You've got all these things going in your favor. I did not mind the shot because he made a really nice defensive play. As they were trying to do a handoff, basically just went up, ripped the ball away from the guy's hands and did that. And then the other, he only took 2 shots the second half. That was one of them. The other one, they ran a set. No, I don't think it was a set necessarily. I think TJD threw a nice skip pass to him. Had one. This was right after Wong's had died on the back of the rim and fallen in. Kopp hits every bit of the rim and rimmed out.
Seen that a lot this tournament, by the way.
In that case. And so you just, was crushing for him. But I just thought, just from an effort perspective, I thought he kind of set the bar tonight in those sequences. And that first sequence of the second half, he was making the plays that Miami was making in the first half and would then start to make again after IU had taken that. Getting the loose balls, making those little hustle plays to deflect it off somebody or keep the ball alive. I thought he was one of the only guys for IU that really did that with any consistently versus Miami had a bunch of guys making those kinds of plays.
Yeah, on Miller, I mean, if people are going to complain about him taking that shot, like you could say, like he should have taken another dribble. Maybe it was his form that missed it, and it wasn't that far off. It wasn't like he airballed it.
It was just a little short.
It was
Didn't
just
hit
a
off
little
the front
short.
of the rim.
Yeah. But here's the thing: people have been complaining about Miller not taking open looks. It was an open look. It might have been too deep, but it was an open look. And you know how many other 3-pointers he got, or how many other shots the offense created for him in the second half? One, and it went in and out. It should have gone in. So that was one of 2 shots he took in the second half. And so when people complain about him, not shooting enough, well, then he does shoot it too much. I mean, I did see people complain. I get it. It's a hinge point, because if it goes in, it's huge. If it doesn't, well, Miami went on a bit of a run there. But here's what I'll say about Miller Kopp. I'm going to go macro with it, not just this game. He took a lot of grief from the fan base at times this season for not shooting or for his defense or whatever. That guy was everything you want a senior to be. He brought it every single game with his effort, whether he was technically guarding well or not. The effort was never not there. And you guys are right. Like, you never question whether or not it mattered to Miller. And he was a guy who directed guys into the right place. He was a guy who was a great representative for the program. And he was a guy who just worked hard all the time. And even when he struggled with his shooting, he would be out there. I mean, you talk to people, who were there, like he'd be the guy out working on his shot after games or long before them to get it right. And I mean, so anybody who has anything negative to say about Miller Kopp, just stick it. The guy was everything you want a senior to be. He was a leader on and off the court, and he played his tail off every game, every time he was on the floor. And he had and he was never really hurting Indiana, except for sometimes he got driven by. That's it. On offense, he was doing what he could. So I just think that we should be very appreciative of the time Miller Kopp gave Indiana, especially after last season and how much he improved this season. He really didn't have a good year last year, and he did this year.
Coach, you have a moment for us?
Yeah, and it's probably tied in the stats, because we're probably going to talk about the rebounding, but the amount of time on defense we watched the shot. There were guys that would come in and push us underneath the basket. Happened to Trace Jackson Davis, happened to Race. Our guards very rarely went in to rebound, and we talked about that on Friday night too, giving up the opportunities we did to Kent State, and they didn't take advantage of it. Well, it was just the opposite. But there was a lot of watching the shot, and again, no one does that on purpose. These guys are hurting, and the coaching staff's hurting and all of that. But you've got to go back and if you're going to win in the NCAA tournament, you cannot have moments within games or offense or defense where you don't do everything right, because that was a top 20 team. A 5 seed is a top 20 team. And the rebounding effort blocking out, and the lack of effort of guards going in to try to secure rebounds as well, was just it was really sad, because that's part of the reason Indiana lost. You could play great defense and hold them to a decent shooting percentage, and then they get an extra opportunity. And when you're just outworked, you get inside position, or you get knocked off of your position, then you're not doing everything that's needed to win. And there's no stat for, offensive rebounds given up, like there are turnovers or things like that in the box score. But everyone tonight was very, very poor in their technique of rebounding, and that's heart and mind. And then you got to question, is it fatigue? Is it preparation? Is it attitude? Is it whatever? And one of the things that's plagued Indiana basketball for several years is the mental side of it on the road, after no rest. This program has to level that out if they're going to consistently be where we want them to be. But that was shocking to me, the effort of guys who are 6'7" versus our guys tonight, from a couple of veteran players that fill the stat box, and we love them. But that effort on rebounding is very, 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 very poor, and it was tough to watch.
This is one of Trace's worst rebounding games that we've seen, and he's been a terrific rebounder. I mean, Coach, it may just be an
either,
well, and it may just be an emphasis thing. We talked about this way back when. This team has poor rebounding fundamentals, so I attribute it a lot less to effort and focus than I do to habit. I just think this team doesn't have good rebounding habits. They sit there and watch the ball and wait for someone else to get it.
Yeah.
and they don't, they don't box out instinctively. It's like when they do it, you really notice it because you don't see it very often. So to me, and again, this as a coach, I mean, there's so many things that you can emphasize, and it, like if you're naturally just a good rebounder, like Trace can do it when he's really into it, and tonight, just wasn't quite himself. But we don't have good rebounding fundamentals as a program, and so that's certainly something that needs to get better.
Part of it is your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. We have great rim protection, but the rim protection has to leave a guy. And then are we doing everything to crack down on the weak side? We've talked about that all year long, that you're not going to dissuade Trace from going to block shots, but then you got to have 2 or 3 guys on the backside cracking down, or at least trying to go get the basketball. And I do think that the coaches we go against know that, and also say when Trace comes to block a shot, they'll send a guy or two to a specific spot where he vacated. And then did we build those right habits? I agree with you. I think it was habits. Did we build those habits? If we're going to send Trace to block everything, we've really got to be good at this. And Indiana never was good at that all year, and it came to haunt us tonight.
A couple other moments, the first half, especially the first 10 minutes, they jump out to that big 8-0 lead. Kopp hit a 3 that made it 8-3 that at the time felt huge. Like it just kind of settled everything down. But it really felt for about the first 10 minutes like we were just, desperately trying to make plays just to stay within arm's length. And one of the guys who made several of those plays was Trey Galloway. It was 15-7. Trey jumps a pass, gets that transition dunk, made it 15-9. It was big. He ended up having 5 steals tonight, and really, did some good things, on both ends, even though obviously the team struggled. And again, Jalen just from the jump was struggling. It really did. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it looked like he got hit in the groin area on the very first play of the game, and it almost took him out of the play. And it felt like for the first 5 minutes he was just out of it. He was looking to the officials for calls and just didn't seem focused. And they interviewed Woodson, and he was like, we need to stop complaining. We need to stop chirping. We need to just play. And it felt like, he was kind of talking about Jalen. And so, Jalen has the sequence where he gets blown by, makes a bad pass, and Woody takes him out. Didn't take him out for foul trouble, just took him out because he was playing really poorly. And to Jalen's credit, I thought he responded well to it, right after that. It was 2011, the first play when he got back in, Nigel Pack blew by him. He recovered well and blocked the shot. He hit that little runner to make it 20-13. The next possession, he just took it and no one stopped him. He just drove all the way to the lane and made it, didn't settle for a jumper, made it 22-15. And I thought at that, after that sequence, okay, Jalen's ready to go. And obviously, was up and down, for the rest of the game. And I think Ryan, it's a difficult game to assess from Jalen because, I do think it's important to remember the guy's a freshman. He's playing in his first NCAA tournament, and he carries such a heavy load for this team. And he did not play well tonight, but he's also a freshman who is learning the kind of effort and focus it takes to play well every game. And it's unfortunate because this is probably going to be our last vision of him as an Indiana Hoosier. And whereas with Trace, we got to see him overcome his freshman ups and downs where he would just have games where he looked out of it. And then you see him as a senior and it's like, wow, look at the player he became. And we're never going to get to see that from Jalen. And so I just want to offer that perspective, not to absolve him for the accountability for a poor performance tonight, because it was certainly there and Indiana needed him to be better. And I have a feeling he would probably watch this game and say, gosh, I didn't do this well. I didn't do that well. But I do think it's important to remember, where this kid is and everything that he's done for this, for this program this year. And so this was a bad game, but overall, given everything that he had to carry for this team, he had a good season. And as coach has said, some of the shots he took were shots that the offense is designed to give him. So I find it hard. I think it's fair to be critical of his performance tonight, but I think we, just from other comments I've seen, I think we need to slow down a little bit on some of the harsher stuff about the kid because, he did so much for Indiana this year and just went out with a bad game tonight.
No, I don't blame Jalen for his bad game. I blame the circumstance for his bad game. Look, This is what happens when you put all this weight on a freshman. He's one of your 2 players who have the ball all the time, and he's as young as he is. You're going to have up and down games. We said that at the beginning of the season. Like, Jalen Hood-Schifino is a great point guard. He's going to be a first-round pick, but he's a freshman, just like every other freshman. He's going to have ups and downs. He's going to have games off. We said that all year. And, part of the problem, and I know you lose Xavier Johnson to injury, and you were planning to have him this season and planning to have him when Jalen goes off the floor. You've got him. When he goes off the floor, you got Jalen. I understand that. But he got injured in December, and they never developed another guy who could give Jalen a rest or maybe give him a seat. Trey Galloway did his best, but Trey Galloway is not a point guard.
Well, who else on this roster is going to do that, though?
I don't know. But, work on something. Find something or find a way to deal with that, with that issue instead of trying. Because when he would go out, they'd run the same exact offense as when he was in, only the ball handler couldn't make that 18-foot jumper. And so, again, you've got to diversify what you're doing for the personnel that you have. And that's something that never happened. And guess what? You're not going to have Jalen Hood-Schifino next year. And Xavier Johnson is good, but he doesn't have the ceiling of Jalen, and he's not as big as Jalen, so he's not going to be able to get those pull-up jumpers as easily as Jalen did. You're going to have to change things. And maybe that's a good thing for the program because you can't just run that high pick and roll to death. And again, you're not going to have Trace Jackson Davis either. So it's again,
it's hard to get mad at missed shots if they're part of the offense.
Especially
and Xavier Johnson was in this role last year, and he had good games and he had bad games. We go back to that Wisconsin game where he was taking all those shots. That's the design of the offense.
It is.
And the offense has worked at times. Tonight, the offense did not work because the defense that Larrañaga chose took us out of things, and then it forced players into taking some extra shots or turning the ball over. And that's where, I'm not so down on Hood-Schifino. Do I think he played well? No, I don't. But was he doing what was asked of him? Yeah, he was doing what was asked of him. He just didn't execute tonight, and he took shots that he hit at Purdue. And I think that he's encouraged to take shots because he is a talented person. So he just played. I think it was off tonight. His game wasn't as pure.
I think the quality of the looks in the Purdue games were better. It felt like
here's
the other thing. Were a little more forced.
Here's the other thing.
Correct.
If you look at the Kent State game and this game where he struggled to get his shot, and the reason he struggled to get his shot was the defense was playing to defend his shot more than doing the drop coverage. But also look at the Purdue's guards versus the guards they played tonight and the guards they played against Kent State. They're not athletic. They're not super quick. And he was able to get to the spots he wanted and take it off. And they're also small, really small. So he was able to get to the spots he wanted, take the shots he wanted with a clean look. I do not think he was, not that I don't think, he wasn't able to get that against Kent State, who played aggressively on him, and against Miami tonight. Those guards, they knew what to do. They took it away. They took away Trace Jackson Davis, basically said, find anyone else to beat us, and Indiana couldn't do it. And so that's why Jalen ends up forcing shots, because really, on some of the possessions, while they were bad shots, I don't know where Indiana was getting other shots. It wasn't, there were a couple times where Miller was wide open on the wing or Trey was wide open, but in general, there weren't like a ton of clean looks just sitting around. So again, you got to diversify what you're doing when one of your guys struggles.
Yep. All right. Well, this should be fun. Let's talk numbers. Andy, we're going to go to you first. You can have this one.
Play like a giant fart noise for about 3 minutes, and then we could just move on from the second.
We need the Brad Underwood soundbite right about now.
Yeah, I mean, they're all bad. What do you want to, the rebounds? Miami had more offensive rebounds than IU had defensive rebounds for the game. IU out rebounded by 17 in total. Got outscored. IU got outscored points in the paint, 46-28. The bread and butter of this team got outscored on fast break points, 15-6. Outscored on second chance points, 29-11. Outscored on bench points, 14-0. Other than that, a lot of good numbers to talk through.
Yeah, other than that, Ms. Lincoln, how was the play? Was it?
Yeah, every way that you can get dominated, it was pretty much at play here. IU did shoot 25 threes in the game, which is probably a season high. Now,
because we jacked 10 of them.
Yeah,
like 9 of them were at the end.
10 of them came in the last 180 seconds of the game, I think. But yeah,
I will say, I want to highlight real quick the bench points. One of the things I thought was going to be really important tonight on the short turnaround was getting production from the bench. Because you got a guy like Race Thompson who has battled a lot of injuries and hasn't been as good on short rest, and and Indiana was going to need points. Even a good defensive performance coach against Miami, they're going to put up points. And so Indiana was going to need to get some lift there. Malik Renew played 10 minutes, did not take a shot.
They couldn't get him the ball.
Tamar came in and he got some good looks. I mean, he got some open looks, and he just couldn't make them. And look, we've seen guys in this tournament, where you get in the tournament in these different gyms with a different ball, and it just looks like you can't shoot it. But for whatever the explanation was, he just couldn't make a shot. And so he's 0 for 13 in the tournament. And Caleb Banks came in for those 3 minutes, provided defensive spark, but you're not really expecting him to give you much offense. But getting a giant 0 from those guys on the bench, Coach, to me, if you had told me that coming into the game, I would have said we're going to lose, because we needed points in this game against Miami. And those two guys, down the stretch in Big Ten play were better. And here in the NCAA tournament, they weren't really able to get going at all.
But yes, not so disappointed in Renew, because if you don't get a shot as a post player and you're having trouble getting the ball to Trace,
they really
Jackson
had
Davis,
trouble getting the ball.
You're sure as heck not going to get it to Renew in the post, and you don't want him jacking up threes. A little disappointed in Tamar. He needs to come off and hit some. But it also goes back, and I know people will be all over me about this, but when you got to have the ability to have something within an offense to get shots. And if the shots are going to two people only, I don't think you can sit here and say the bench is unproductive. Develop your bench. Put them in a position to score. You're down to 5-man rotation because the players aren't good. What in the hell's been going on all year? That's a legit question. Maybe it's the players, and they don't deserve the extra run because they're not working hard, or they're not putting in the time, or they're not doing what the coach says. It could very well be the players. But man, we got 13 kids and 12. One's hurt. 11. I'll just keep going backwards here as the guys who aren't dressing. But and it's frustrating as a coach too if you can't trust players because you put them in practice or you put them in games and they don't produce, and then you got to shorten the bench. And I don't think shorten the bench in postseason is wrong. No. But to expect Trace Jackson Davis and Hood Schifino need to be darn near perfect for Indiana to win. That's the way the system is put. And that's extra pressure on those two. I feel really bad for Hood Schifino because he had to play well, and he didn't. To say that Tamar and Renew were going to win the game, I don't agree with that. It was going to be Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood Schifino to win this game. And you had one play up to their level, and you had one who didn't. And bench or no bench, the bench points against Kent State were bonus, and that wasn't even bench. That was what
your role players. Yeah,
the role players got some points, but it's just tough. I think it's a tough system for role players to get points. Yes. And I'm not saying, again, it's a system that won 23 games and got Indiana back to the round of 32, and we're in a much better place than anywhere else. But it is a system where you've got to have your top two players. Miami had a lot of players, more than two tonight, that could execute.
Yeah, well, and I think that's something, obviously we're going to spend a lot of time in the offseason talking macro, and I think that's going to be an interesting thing to unpack because, what are you selling to transfer portal guys that you want to come in and be role players when you can't really show them a whole lot of opportunity? I've been frustrated with it a lot this season. We all have. You're
technically right. You need bench points and you need role player points. You're not incorrect, but it doesn't surprise me that you get 10 minutes for one and the other's been up or down, that you don't get them in a high pressure game.
Another thing about the bench and the role players is when you have that offense that is so geared to two people, and let's not act like that was just Jalen Schifino. Last year with X, it was the same offense, and that's actually when those guys got on the same page and started working well together. That's when they made that run in the Big Ten tournament to get to the NCAA tournament. But the problem is if you're not developing those guys and not having them involved in the offense, and then you're getting pissed when you do kick it out to them and they have a little window to shoot, but they haven't been shooting all game and they haven't been involved in the offense at all, and you're upset because they pass up a shot, you're training them not to do anything on offense, and therefore you can't get mad at them for not shooting when their opportunities come, because the offense isn't built to give them. Woodson said that, even said that the offense isn't built to get. He said it isn't built to get Miller Kopp shots. Well, don't say that out loud. Like, you know, I mean, you're just telling him that it doesn't matter if he's ever open. So yeah, I agree with you, Coach. It's the way this system is designed, and you see it a lot in the NBA. And that's where Mike Woodson comes from. It was a lot of twosomes in the NBA with a bunch of veteran, you know, role player guys around them who would get a couple of points, but it was, you know, Shaq and Kobe, and you know, that's the era he coached in, where everybody had two players they would go to. And it was a point guard and usually a wing or a forward. They would run plays, just a two-man game, and they would score the lion's share of the points, and then you get everybody else would get a little bit here or there. And that's the offense, and it needs to get better. It just does, especially because you're not going to have, you know, a first-round pick and an All-American next year or in the future maybe. I mean, this was when was the last time Indiana had that? It's been a while. So and so it's not something that happens all the time. This was a special group, and I don't know if the offense works without them.
Andy?
Yeah, the only other stat that I had, I guess this speaks a little bit to what you guys were just talking about. IU ends up with just 10 assists in the game. And I mean, when this, you know, Jalen led the way with 3, Galloway had 2, and a whole bunch of other guys with 1. I mean, in the times when this offense was looking good in the year, like, there were some pretty gaudy assist numbers that were there, whether that was through pick and roll, whether that was through other things. And Miami made IU very much a beat them one-on-one, and IU doesn't have a lot of athletes that are going to do that more often than not. And it wasn't, you know, the turnovers were not great. Some of them were untimely. You know, the teams, you know, played each other even from a turnover perspective. But yeah, the fact that IU held the 10 assists in this game, granted you only made 26 shots, I think that speaks to some of the offensive structural woes as well as how things actually went in this game.
Isn't it, you know, to that point, and then we'll get to your stat, Ryan, isn't it amazing that, think about some of this team's worst offensive performances this season? You know, the home game against Iowa, the offensive performance against Penn State in the Big Ten tournament was terrible, but the numbers look a little bit better because of that flurry that they had at the end. And then tonight, those are all like sub 100 defenses.
Yep.
That Indiana should have been able to take advantage of, and they did a few things, and we weren't able to do it.
You know what it was, Jared?
It's mind-boggling.
Every time this team struggled on defense, the offense stalled. Yeah. Every single time. That's when the runs would happen, is they'd get beat on defense, and rather than answering by a play that they couldn't defend, you know, it'd be one thing if they ran a great offense and scored, but, you know, they would get beat on a drive and then go back down, take a bad shot. Miami be right back to do the same thing. And that happened all season. Look at the Iowa game. There's no reason Iowa should have been able to stop Indiana from scoring. And they did, because Indiana beat itself on offense when it didn't play well defensively. The stat that I have, and it's a couple, but they're related to the same thing. Trayce Jackson-Davis ends his career taking 10 shots in a game. Race Thompson took 12, and Jalen Hood-Schifino took 22. And, I mean, Tamar Bates took 7. I realize some of those were at the end. He's just kind of throwing the ball up there. But 10 shots for Trayce Jackson-Davis. He did get to the free throw, shot 11 free throws, so some of those, you know, are negated by fouls. But still, man, I mean, you're behind like you were, and they've got a defense that can't. I mean, they prevented the catch, but once he got the ball, he performed very well. Find a way to get him a catch. Find a way to get him the ball. Give it out to him at the top of the key in the middle of the defense. I don't care. Get him the ball, because he was effective when he had it. And I also, look, you know, 5 blocks for him as well. But the other thing I'll point out too is Jalen Hood-Schifino took 11 threes. Kopp, our highest percentage guys, Kopp and Galloway, took a combined 8. It took a combined 7.
They made 4 of them.
Then the shot numbers, Ryan, it speaks again to Larenega's strategy was to pressure and speed up the game.
Make the freshmen
and make it. Make other players, make it difficult for people to get into any position to get the ball to Trayce Jackson-Davis. And that happened in the FDU upset of Purdue. Edie did not score the last 8 minutes. You got a 7-4 dominant center, and they just put pressure on guards. Well, that happened to Indiana tonight. We have an All-American center who took 10 shots because their defense, while statistically not very good, played
Smart.
their asses off and hustled around and made life just miserable for the perimeter guys. And then the lack of adjustments or different options to get Trace the ball. He only got 10 shots. And then you got into hero ball late in the game where people just had to jack stuff up. That's exactly what Larrañaga and that staff wanted to do, and we just fell into the trap.
Yeah, no, look, they just have to work. I'm sorry, real quick, Andy. They have to work on finding other ways to get their best player the ball. And sorry, buddy. They have to work on finding ways.
Maybe once, just say, Andy, why don't you go first?
I've done that plenty this year. I've gotten better about that. Not in this
That's
point.
the funniest thing that's been said on the show all year.
But anyway, that was the thing is they couldn't get him the ball when they needed to, and you find a way to do it. It doesn't have to be a straight post up. You've seen him work from the outside over the last month and a half and do really well. Get him the ball there and let him dribble and find room. If they suck in, you've got wide open 3-point shooters on the end. I mean, there's just needs to be more creativity for stuff like that, and not being able to get him the ball. He was either getting fouled when he get the ball in the post up, he was getting fouled or doing something with it. He only had one turnover. It wasn't like he was getting it stolen from him on the interior. So just that's disappointing to see him go out like that. I would have rather had him go 7 for 25, and go out on his shield than only getting 10 shots.
Yeah, I thought a couple things with him. One, I feel like he wasn't as successful getting the ball on the perimeter and trying to dribble. It was a play. I think they ended up stepping out of bounds, but the Miami defenders are so much smaller. They're willing to gamble because they're going to get beat if they play him straight up and play behind him. So I know there's one play he starts to put on the floor. They kind of dip in from behind and knock the ball out. I think it ended up going out of bounds. Yeah, the other thing though that was important when IU made that run toward the end of the second or toward the end of the first half was he'd gotten a second foul on Omier, and they took him out. Was such a huge factor on the offensive glass, and didn't really, again going away from that short roll and some different things. They're really preventing them from getting a chance to get him another foul and getting him on the bench. I mean, he was critical to what they were doing. Miller was more effective offensively because the IU didn't really have a great matchup for him, and they really attacked Brace Thompson with him. But yeah, that going away from him hurts you on multiple levels. It hurts him from being able to take shots, but it also hurts you from being able to put one of the better players of the other team on the bench, which to me, some of Miami's offensive rebounding slowed down at least a little bit toward the end of the first half when he wasn't in the game. But when he was in there, I mean, he was a good bet to get every single rebound that was out there.
Yeah, the only other number I'll add here before we break is 8 rebounds for Trace Jackson Davis, which means that he ends his career not getting a double-double, which is something that he did so often this year. And the rebounding was the story of the game. And for as well as Trace played when he got the ball offensively, and some of the blocks were absolutely huge. This was, I thought, one of the poor performances from him on the defensive end of the court than we've seen in a while. Just kind of being late a few times. I don't know what the right word is for him rebounding. We've seen the high level rebounding from him tonight, and it wasn't there for whatever reason. And so, and if he's able to, secure 4, 5, 6 more rebounds, we've seen him get 14, 15, 16 rebounds a lot this season. And if he's able to do that and prevent some of those second chance points and end those possessions and go the other way, maybe things are different for Indiana tonight. But that also, Coach, speaks to what you said, is that there is just so much pressure on Trace and Jalen to be Supermen every game. And it works sometimes, but, it's unsustainable, which is why this team has been so inconsistent. So, a 23 and 8 and 5 from your center, should be good enough to win games. And unfortunately, that stat line really isn't good enough for Indiana to win games. It's got to be even better. And that's less a criticism of Trace, I think, than just kind of a more systemic criticism of what kind of ailed this team this season. All right, well, coming up here on the Assembly Call, this especially long episode of the Assembly Call, we will hand out our Game Balls and Hoosier Hustle Award, and, I don't know, discuss some other stuff after that. There's no game to look to, so we'll figure out what else to talk about. That's next on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thank you, Jordan. Every time Nigel Pack pulled up from like 10 feet behind the three-point line, it reminded me of that three that Jordan Hulls hit against Michigan State, where he was like 10 feet behind the line and made it, which was awesome. I was trying to find happy memories to keep me going there during the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. You can catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, and more importantly now, since we're in the off season, every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com, and make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. It will keep you connected and informed. Here in the off season, you can go to join.assemblycall.com. That's join.assemblycall.com. We send out a weekly news roundup that will keep you updated on all the things going on this off season, so that you don't have to actively track it all the time. We'll just send it to you in a nice, neat weekly newsletter, and you can stay up to date that way. All right, gentlemen, it is time for our game balls, which are presented by our friends at Bloom Environmental, where Allie and James and the crew help folks in southern and south central Indiana maintain healthy air quality in their home or business. You can learn more at bloomenviro.com, and when you mention this ad, you get 23% off all of their testing services. That is 23 in honor of TJD. Coach, we will go to you first. Your game ball for tonight's game.
You got to go TJD for his effort tonight. It's going to be sad not to see him play anymore in the Indiana uniform. I thought while he struggled and didn't have one of his better games, he was the best player for Indiana tonight overall. And it's just been his award all year, so I think we should end that way.
Yeah. Andy?
Yeah, it's same. I mean, 23 points, wish he'd gotten more. 23 points on 10 field goal attempts. Just really underscores how important it was to try to find ways to get him the ball more. Made his free throw as well. I think that was, maybe an underrated part of his improvement this season was 9 of 11 from the free throw line in this game. Showed huge strides in that area, and the rebounding was a struggle. And I think the assist number, I talked about that with the team. That was something that he had become so adept at, and for a game for him to only have one, I think underscores a lot of the issues that IU had on offense. But 5 blocks as well, and 39 minutes once again from him, and so feels a fitting way to end it that he put up numbers in pretty much every game over the course of the season. This was no exception.
Yeah, Ryan Trace sent out a tweet about 20 minutes ago. Says, "It's always glory to the man above. Thank you, Indiana basketball, for everything and welcoming me into your family. I wore that jersey with pride every time I stepped onto the court. We went through some tough times, but this place is only going to get better. Love, TJD." He was incredible. He was absolutely incredible this season, and it's disappointing that we went out without a vintage Trace performance. He was just a really, really good All-American center tonight, not like Superman. And it would have been nice to see, another one of those. But what he did this season, even though the team's success isn't what any of us wanted, most of all him, this individual performance from him this season will go down in history and be talked about for a long time, and with good reason, because he was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
One of the great seasons in Indiana basketball history.
Yes.
Especially given the weight that was on his shoulders. A lot of other guys have had great seasons, but had really good teammates as well. And he had good. I'm not. That's not to knock his teammates, but so much more was expected of him.
Yes.
He had to be good. They weren't winning without him. I think the Purdue game on the road is the only time they really won where he had an okay Trace performance, and Jalen had 35 points. Yeah, it's him. It's a game ball, not just for this game, but for his career. And Jared, I don't know if you still have these numbers, but it'd be really funny to go back and see how many game balls Trace got in his 4 years on this program.
We got 22 this season, and he missed 2 games. So,
I mean, the guy has meant so much to this program, not just this team, and to the school and the university and all of us fans. So, of course, it's him. Even on a night, as you said, that's kind of an off night for him, he was still the best player on the floor, and it wasn't even in question. And I think the best player on the floor on both teams. I mean, that was evidenced by the way that Miami ran defenses at him. They're just not the way we're going to beat him is he's not going to touch the ball. And so yeah, it's a it's very, very bittersweet night because it's really hard to say goodbye to Trace Jackson Davis, but we're all so lucky to have gotten to watch him over the last 4 years and watch him grow as a person and a player. So great job, Trace. We wish you well, and we'll be happy to see you cheering your brother on next year at some point.
Mm-hmm. And watching him in the NBA, because he's going to play in the NBA. There's no question about it. Zach Osterman also tweeted this out from the press conference. Said Trace was asked what he'll remember about his time at IU. Trace says, I just think about being part of the change. 2 years ago, we were getting booed in our home city off the court in the Big Ten tournament. Said he hopes the fan base feels more hopeful now, which is, an interesting comment for him to make, and certainly genuine from his perspective. But I think it's, and it's going to take a lot of processing this offseason, I think, to evaluate what the hopefulness level is of Indiana fans. I think undoubtedly these last 2 seasons have been steps in the right direction. There's no question about it. But now as you stare into a future without Trace Jackson Davis, it's incredibly uncertain. And so I think part of his legacy, we're not going to know about really until we kind of look down the road. What is Indiana building? But that's also not really his responsibility, what happens next. Like, I think what he has done over the last 2 seasons, and Mike Woodson deserves credit too, because Trace Jackson Davis has given him credit for unlocking what he can be as a player. But he put this program on his back for the last 2 seasons, got us back to the NCAA tournament. We have won more games than we have, and made it to the second round this year, and that's not great at a school like Indiana, but it's progress, and it's better than what we've seen in most seasons over the last 30. And so now, what does this program do doing forward? And, whereas we made the comment earlier in the show about, hey, what are you selling to role players based on, kind of what you've seen? Well, certainly Mike Woodson can go into, a superstar big man's home, whether it's a freshman recruit or a transfer guy, and say, look at this. Look what this guy became. And, what Trace Jackson became is one of the best players in school history and one of the best players in the country. And he was phenomenal. And so hopefully what we saw over the last 2 seasons is a stepping stone to something better. But it is, at this moment, it's hard to see that without him. And that's just a testament to how terrific he was. And so game ball to Trace, not just for this game, but for everything that he meant to the program this season, for how much he grew and how much he put the team on his back. He was phenomenal, and it was so much fun to watch him play this year. And so he deserves all of those accolades. And, he's going to go down as one of the most beloved Indiana players of all time, and with good reason. Just a terrific, terrific career that unfortunately ended too soon tonight. Anything else to add on the game ball, gentlemen, before we go on to the Hoosier Hustle Award? God, man, it's tough talking about Trace's last game, man. I'm gonna miss him as a Hoosier. We've been through a lot with him over the last 4 years, and to see where he came, it's a gift to a fan of any college basketball team to have a guy like him stay for 4 years and fully realize what he can be. So just very, very appreciative that we got the chance to follow him as fans and talk about him so much on this show. And we always, hopefully we were fair to him. I think we were, but what he became this season was just unbelievable. All right, let's talk Hoosier Hustle.
The Hoosier Real Hustle Award.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, reminding you to check out our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services has been providing off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals since 2001. In other words, they're in the business of prevention and peace of mind. And remember, prevention cannot be measured. To learn more about how Evansville Security Services can help you preserve your peace of mind by preventing bad outcomes, visit evansvillesecurityservices.com. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com.
Thank you, Anthony. All right, let's talk Hoosier Hustle Award. I have a feeling I know where we're all going with this one, but let's make it official. Andy, we'll go to you first.
Miller Kopp for me. Thought he was a guy who really matched some of the intensity and the desire that Miami seemed to have for tonight, and really over the latter part of the season, as we talked about. I think his growth and really just getting comfortable over his time at IU was while I didn't have as much time with him as we did with TJD, I thought really came into his own in the latter part of his IU career, and really played hard tonight. Made a lot of key hustle plays. I felt like during the course of the game, and made some big shots as well. Just didn't get him enough, as was a familiar refrain from a number of other games over the course of the season. But definitely, if I looked at the game of who really played hard and embodied the hustle component of it tonight, it was 100% him.
Someone just tweeted out a picture of Andy and Coach simultaneously taking sips of their beer.
I know. I did really enjoy that. I like
the caption,
that as well.
"Never a more relatable show."
That's what we're here for.
We're here to serve, right?
And sometimes be overserved.
Yeah.
I'm dangerously
That's so
underserved
funny.
at the moment, so that is not an issue right now.
Oh gosh, Coach, are you gonna head out to the porch and do some wolf howling or just screaming into the void tonight? Maybe
No,
maybe some dancing
anxiously awaiting my FDU T-shirt though. From home field.
All right, Coach, you want to say some words on Miller
Yeah.
Kopp for the Hustle Award?
Miller Kopp for me as well. In the off season and leading up to the first game, there's a lot of conversation whether Coach Woodson should keep him in the starting lineup, and I thought, for given his role, he did a lot on the court, but he also did a lot off the court, I think, to help this Indiana team, and especially for us fans, just bringing us a little bit of joy through all the media and things that he did. I think his approach is one that we all maybe can model a little bit. I don't know what he's like in person, but through that social media and other things, and then just how hard he played. He wasn't the quickest defender, but he gave everything he got. He was a positional defender. He fought like heck on drives, staying with it, and great hands, attacks at the rim. And he was just ready for, he maybe had a game or two where he was a little hesitant, but I thought for the most part, and tonight I thought he knew that any game could be his last. I think he played like it. You mentioned that time when he got people in the right spot. Every team needs a Miller Kopp. Sometimes they start and play major minutes. Sometimes they're on the bench and have a bit role. But we will always want guys like Miller Kopp on the Indiana team. So tonight I thought he earned the Hustle Award, but I thought he's done a good job doing that all season long.
Ryan?
Yeah, it's Miller Kopp. No question about it. We talked about it earlier, but just that's a guy who brought it every game. And as you guys said, I'll repeat it. You never wondered if it was important to Miller. And he definitely didn't want this to be his last game. And there were times this year where he did exactly that and gave the team life. And, we're going to miss him because the sad thing is I think the roster you look at coming back next year could really use a Miller Kopp. And I think every team could use a version this guy in Miller Kopp. And quite frankly, after last year, Miller could have gone into the tank and, could have gotten into his head. Instead, he worked really hard in the offseason and came back and brought his shot back from the dead and added better defense and effort all season long. So kudos to him, and we're going to miss him. I really am going to miss watching that guy play. I love watching him hit threes.
Yeah, last season his offensive rating was 96.5. This season 125.2.
Is that better, Jared?
That's better. That's quite an improvement, I would say. Quite an improvement. I said a lot about Miller Kopp earlier. I thought he brought it. Showed a lot of defensive improvement, and just showed a lot of leadership on the court. And unfortunately, Indiana as a team just didn't have 40 more minutes of kind of the all-out focus and intensity that they needed tonight. And Miami brought it, and Indiana didn't, and so it resulted in a loss. But I thought Miller really tried to be that guy. You look at the Hoosier Hustle Award season totals. Trey Galloway led the way this season with 7. Race Thompson and Miller Kopp tied with 5. And then we had 3 guys with 3. Jalen Hood-Schifino, Jordan Geronimo, and who wants to take a guess at who the other guy was with 3 Hustle
Caleb
Awards?
Banks.
Not Caleb Banks. He had 2. Who else wants to guess?
Tamar?
Not Tamar. Tamar had 2.
Who'd you say the ones were?
Jordan Geronimo and Jalen Hood-Schifino both had 3, and there's one other guy who had 3 Hustle Awards.
Galloway?
Galloway led with 7.
Oh,
so he was first.
We didn't give it to Malik, did we?
Malik had 2.
Okay. So we named everybody on the roster.
Running out of names.
Xavier Johnson.
Xavier Johnson.
Oh,
Xavier
okay.
Johnson.
Oh, that makes sense.
Xavier Johnson had 3 in the whatever 9, 11,
God,
9,
that
10
seems like
games that he
2
played.
seasons ago that we last saw Xavier play.
It does, but it shows his impact that he was able to do that. I wonder if he got any game balls. Well, no, he didn't get any game balls. No, he did get a game ball. So he had 1 game ball and 3 Hoosier Hustle Awards in 10 games.
A month.
However many games he played. Yeah, that guy made a difference. All right. I mean, look, lingering questions. I mean, obviously the big lingering questions are just what the hell is this roster going to look like next year? None of us have any idea, but it's certainly something that we will be tracking. We're not going to speculate on this show about transfers out, but in the modern era of college basketball, you always have to assume that there will be guys who transfer out. Certainly Indiana is going to be a program that's going to hit the portal hard and already is doing that. So they're going to be guys who transfer in. We'll see if they land any late recruits. 2 straight seasons, they've landed a late recruit in Tamar Bates and Malik Renew. So we'll see. I mean, that is a lingering question that we cannot answer tonight, but that we will track all offseason. And I think, Coach, we've brought up I think the main lingering question with this program really is what is this system that we're running and what's it going to look like with new personnel? And I think we've brought up a lot of the questions that we have about it. It's not that it didn't work. It's not that it's terrible. It's just, you've got to have a particular type of personnel to make it work. And in the college game, it probably leads to more inconsistencies than it does in the NBA game. Because, in the NBA, when you have, a role player who's not necessarily getting shots, well, he's a professional and he's making millions of dollars and he's a little bit more mature and able to handle that than an 18-year-old kid who wants to showcase himself to make it to the professionals, and can have all kinds of pressure going through their head for those reasons. So it's a different mix. And I think to me, as we walk away from this season and this game, and knowing obviously how different it's going to be without Jalen and Trace next year, and hopefully X is there to kind of help anchor it. That's kind of my question: is what does this system look like in college basketball? Obviously Woodson's going to have to recruit more athletes and more guys who can make it work. But as I think I came around this season, Coach, to thinking, gosh, you have a guy like Trace, you've got a point guard like Jalen who can be so good. I get building the offense around these 2 guys. I wish around the edges we had done more for the shooters, but I kind of understand it this season. And it very well may have maximized what this team could be. But what is that going to look like moving forward? And I really don't know. So it's not to say that it hasn't worked or hasn't helped Indiana take steps forward the last 2 seasons, but now what's it going to look like? And how adaptable is it going to be? Those are lingering questions we can't answer, but I think are fair to ask.
All right, you want your coach to go to your first option and your second option be the best 2 players on your roster. You wouldn't want anything other than that. It's how you do it that is going to win you games consistently versus having these ups and downs. And I think, maybe that's something that you try to do something one way and then you learn from it. But yeah, I think Coach Woodson has done a good job in the 2 years that he's been here of getting Indiana back to this point. I do think that there needs to be a little more modern collegiate ball incorporated, and maybe it will when you don't have Trace Jackson Davis, and you have some wings that can do some different things. So that's to be seen, and you got to trust Coach to put in an offense that it best fits the roster. So the question is this the offense and he's going to fit everyone around it, or was this the offense because he thought it was the best option with this roster? And he very well could have been right. But there are coaches out there like Jim Larinaga and other coaches that have ideas on how to stop this offense. The same problem's happening here where I live right now is you have one style of play, and certain types of teams, and especially in tournament time, can stop that heavy post presence type of offense. So, I think Woodson wants to win and wants to bring Indiana another banner, and so he'll spend the time getting the kids from the portal and recruiting players and making those adjustments, and then we'll see what kind of offense. But I think the offense needs some tweaks. But we didn't talk a lot about this. They took a step back defensively too, and was that just the roster? Was that minus X and his pressure? But they were in the mid 40s. We'll see what happens with this game. That was the worst since like 2018 finishing position for an Indiana defense. I think the first year of Archie. So they took a step back defensively in giving up some drives and rebounding and all of those things as well. So there you have to take a look at when you don't have that rim protection next year. What are you going to do defensively to get back in the top 20? How many of us thought at the beginning of the year we'll have a top 20 defense if the offense can go from 90? It made the jump it needed to, really, 90 to 28. What happened with the defense moving from a top 25 defense up to the mid 40s and really costing Indiana some games and some heavy losses? So every year you got to say, I just got hired to take this job. What does this program need, and what adjustments I need? And Coach Woodson, I think, cares, and we're better off right now, I think, because of what he brings to Indiana University. Tweak some X's and O's, talk to his staff, get out on that recruiting trail and bust your butt and close on some deals, and let's go at it next year. So yeah, a tough way to go out in a non-competitive situation, but we're better off. At least we're here getting having a tough show as opposed to not even being on the bracket. That was before Coach Woodson, and I got to remember that as well. And in my frustration this evening, we've been on the bracket 2 years in a row in his first 2 years. And so make some progress, fix the things that aren't working, and let's make it 3 years in a row and maybe try to get to that Sweet 16 or further.
Yep. And Andy, the only other lingering question really is, how do the women do tomorrow night? Because the women are in the round of 32 against Miami. Hopefully they have a nice long run ahead of them. And so we will certainly be turning our attention to that. Our friends at Doing the Work will have a show after that game. And we hope that they are playing for a long, long time. And we certainly encourage everyone to turn their attention there. I know earlier today there were only balcony seats left for that game tomorrow. So if you're in town and you can get there, like I know watching a game from the Assembly Hall balcony is not a good seat. But how great would it be for these ladies to sell that place out and have it totally filled? It would be incredible. So if you're anywhere around there and you can get there to see, I think it's fair to call this the best women's basketball team we've ever had. Go see them because they're absolutely incredible. And this is the last time that they're going to play at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And that game is tomorrow at 8:00. And I don't know. We'll see. The next time we talk about the men, I guess, will be next Thursday. And we'll see if we want to do it on Thursday, if we want to go on Wednesday. Maybe we'll see what the women's schedule is. Who knows? I don't even want to think about that right now because I'm still kind of mourning this season. Anyway, go check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME at checkout for 15% off your first order. Gentlemen, it is time for last call. Andy, lead us off.
Yeah, disappointing end to the season that had its fair share of ups and downs, and it's kind of like what Coach is trying to say. It's hard to, in the frustration of a game like this where opportunities were there and IU didn't take advantage of them by not getting rebounds, not doing the things that they've done at times during the season when they've been most successful. That part's frustrating. I also think you look back at a team that seemed like it was in a tailspin after the first few games of the Big Ten season and totally pulled itself out of it. And these guys deserve a lot of credit for all the things that they may not have done as well as people would have wanted. In tonight's game, that is not easy to do. We've seen IU season spiral quickly and dramatically out of control, and this one seemed headed there. So kudos to the leaders on this team and all of that. And, hard not to look at this game and think about it being TJD's last game. You guys talked about some of those quotes. I think the thing that probably sits most with me is there's a picture of him, Jalen Hitchafino, very clearly. And I think Jeff Rabjohns had a tweet about it, said he was just really, really upset about the game. He's got his head buried in a towel, and TJD is comforting him in the moment that, his college career came to an end. He was thinking about somebody else and doing the right thing by somebody else. And that's what that says everything you need to know about that kid, about his leadership, about what he means to this program and everything else. So certainly a sad image, but one that reinforces all the great things that you think about Trace and all the great things that he's accomplished, to be able to, in that moment, put other people ahead of what I'm sure was a lot of emotions of his own. Just a fantastic representative of the university, fantastic basketball player. I think he's one we'll look back on years from now and feel like we were lucky to watch. You don't always say that about some things. There are careers that come to an end that doesn't mean that you don't care, but it doesn't mean quite as much. Like this one meant something. And kudos to him for a career well done. Can't wait to see what he does next. He's certainly earned the right to, to keep playing at an NBA level, something that a lot of people thought he wasn't going to be able to do, and worked his ass off and played his ass off to get there. And just a fantastic season from him. Fantastic leadership. And he will be missed probably more than we even would think now. As you look ahead to next season, I think he'll be missed more than we probably even think right now. But yeah, sad to see it end for him. And but at the same time, we've been lucky to watch him.
Yeah. Gosh, Andy, someone in the community posted like last week, a question. It was basically, are you interested or are you excited? I don't remember what the word was, but it was something like, are you interested or excited to see what the offense looks like next year without Trace Jackson Davis? And it's like, well, yeah, I suppose there's like a part of me that is curious what's that going to look like. But I have a feeling when we get to next season, that curiosity is quickly going to change into just missing having Trace down there, So he's been so great for this program. Coach, last call to you.
A good season, not a great season. It didn't end the way we wanted it to end, obviously, but I said this on shows previous. If you would have told me we lose Xavier Johnson, Hood Shafino would have been out for some key games, Trace dealing with the back during the Christmas holiday, Race being out for 3 games, that Indiana would be a 15th overall in the seed line, earning a 4 seed and playing in the tournament, I'd have told you were crazy. So I'm really going to try to force myself to find this season to be a positive step in the right direction, year 2 of a new regime. The sad part is you had 2 pros and you're not going to be playing anymore. And you had a guy like Race Thompson who gave a lot to this university. It's tough to see those guys move on. And it's tough for this old guy in the era of NIL and the transfer portal to know that we're going to have 6 or 7 guys next year that we don't even know are on our roster right now and what they do. And the continuity of college basketball has changed. And that's what makes Trace Jackson Davis to me very, very special. I don't know how many times you're going to see, 4-year guys have that level of production, just unbelievable level of production where you get to follow them and root for them for years with the in and out nature of college basketball. And so I'm going to be disappointed, be upset with the performance, the rebounding, the plays, all of that stuff we talked about tonight. But when I wake up in the morning, we didn't lose to FDU like most of my coworkers are going to have to deal with tomorrow. And that program has lost to, yes, they've been in a little more tournaments, but they can't beat double-digit seeds. We lost to a top 20 team who played extremely well. Perspective. A year ago, I had a heart attack. I'm fortunate to be talking with you guys. The community has been great. The young man I met in Las Vegas, a special young man, his dad keeps texting me pictures, and Ryder wants Coach Tonsoni to know that he's ready to go. I mean, Indiana basketball it's such a great tradition. It sucks when we lose. It sucks when we don't perform well, but it's grateful that I have the 4 of you guys plus everyone else who is Galen and all the connections. Let's make sure we keep perspective. Don't be tweeting at the players and at the coaching staff. They're hurting. They're disappointed as well, and just have some faith that Indiana basketball is bigger than a lot of programs, a lot of fan bases would ever touch or feel. So I'm going to try to remember that because it's such an important thing to wear Indiana gear and to be proud alum, and I'm going to try to remember. I'm pissed, but it's been a good year. It's a year that we need to have repeatedly going forward, and I look forward to the off-season shows. And I'll be down in Bloomington next weekend watching IU baseball and having a Stromboli, and life will go on.
Well said, Coach. Very well said. Ryan, last call.
I think it's true to say that there were definitely positives and strides made this season. I think there's no question about that. IU didn't reach the goals that we set out for it at the beginning of the year, which was top 4 finish in the Big Ten. Hey, check there, make the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2016. Did not happen. Once again, Indiana's ending the season not among the final 16 teams in the country, and that's something. It's not a Mike Woodson problem. That's a program problem for a long time, and it's something that needs to change for Indiana. That needs to be a yearly thing. That you have the chance to do that. As Andy said, just one of the brilliant careers in Indiana basketball came to a close tonight. I think that's what I'm saddest about. I mean, it's sad for all the players, sad for Race Thompson, who I've loved watching play over the last 14 years, it seems. Sad for Miller Kopp and the guys. We always forget the walk-ons, guys who've been here for a long time, and managers who are graduating and all of that. That was their last game too. But Trace, certainly, in my opinion, I don't think there's any question the best Indiana career since Calvert Chaney. He will forever be in the record books. Nobody can take that away from him. No deep tournament run needed to happen. He did it for himself and will be on those lists forever. What I'll say for me is the sad part is that this season is over. And I'm sad for us because we get to sit here and do this every night. And no matter how hard it is after a loss like this, or how hard it is when things are going bad, like that stretch earlier this year, and we're here, overreacting to losses and underreacting to wins and, all that stuff. This is a lot of fun, and it's fun because I get to do it with these guys. We get to do it for all of you watching and listening, and that's what makes this worth doing. And it's a lot of time. It takes over our lives sometimes when there's 3 games in a week plus a Thursday show. I mean, these guys have, kids and families and all that. I'm just a jerk who hops on here and talks and, complains about having to, work writing about sports. And that's my big commitment. But I just want to thank everybody listening who subscribes, who watches, who, even if you don't have anything to do with us and you just popped on for this show, thank you guys for being involved. It means a lot to us. And was this our 12th season, and we're wrapping it up, and thank God we're wrapping it up in an NCAA tournament, because that hasn't happened enough over the years. But again, just
6 out of 12 seasons we've made the NCAA tournament.
Let's not talk about that. The show. Let's just keep those percentages to ourselves. So I just want to thank everybody out there. You make this worth doing, and thank these guys for being co-hosts and brothers and some of my closest friends that we get to do this together. Makes it all worthwhile, and it makes the tough times a little less tough, and it makes the good times even better. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, very well said. I just want to say thank you to Trace and to Race and to Miller, for everything they gave to Indiana basketball. Obviously as you guys said, we only knew Miller for a couple of years, but appreciated what he brought. Race Thompson, been here for 6. And I mean, that guy has just brought so much to Indiana basketball, so much toughness. I know kind of came out this week that he's been dealing with a lot more, kind of injury wise than anybody has really known. And it kind of puts some of his struggles this season into perspective. He didn't have it on a game in, game out basis, but boy, could he dial it up at some important times when you needed it. The end of the Michigan game against Kent State. He didn't have it all the time, but you got to see some vintage Race when Indiana really needed it. And Trace Jackson Davis, it's hard to put into words how much he's meant to this program. And no, he didn't win a Big Ten title, and no, he didn't win a national title or make a deep tournament run. But I don't think he needs that to secure the legacy of what he means to an entire generation of Indiana fans. And there are a lot of young Indiana fans who became fans over these last couple of years because of what Trace Jackson Davis did and what he meant and how he represented the university. And so there'll be plenty of time to talk about where he ranks all time and all that stuff. All that matters is that guy's an all-time great Hoosier, period. He is. And wherever you want to rank him, that's fine. But what we just witnessed for 4 years is really special. A guy that's that good from day one, staying in school for 4 years, producing like he did, and growing like he did, and getting better every season. It was just a really special career to watch. I'm disappointed that it's over, but my goodness, am I thankful that it happened and that we got to watch it. So thank you to those guys. Thank you to you guys for everything this season, and absolutely thank you to our community and everybody who's here, adding meaning to what we do. Having 1,200 people there after the Kent State game, and we were up over 1,100 here tonight live for these late games. It's awesome, and we really appreciate just being part of the conversation with you all. And obviously, we look forward to continuing it with the women's team and continuing it into the off season. It's more abrupt than we hoped. But now, we'll spend some time reflecting on this season and Trace and everything that we learned and the experiences of this year, but then also turn our attention to next season and what's next for this program. I think it's really, really important that these first 2 seasons of the Mike Woodson era be stepping stones to something better and consistent and sustainable, and not just, 2 seasons where you kind of maximize the star player, but then you fall back. And hopefully that is what happens. We'll be tracking it all off season and here next season to talk about it with you all. But this was a good season. This was a fun season. This team did a lot of things and has taken us places that we haven't been in a while. And I know we all have hopes for more, but, given where this program's been over the last 25, 30 years, I really feel like we should enjoy the journey to get back there, not just wait to get there to enjoy it and recognize the successes. This team's done a lot over the last couple of years to improve over where it was. That's meaningful. That matters. And now hopefully they continue to take steps forward in the seasons to come. All right, that is going to do it for, the season of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. Don't forget to go to join.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you, as always, to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show, and special thank you to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then.
Take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Here I come, Mr. Stansoni.
Too late again.
Way too late.
Man.
Oh, man.
That sucks.
It does.
Coach is saying something awesome, but he's muted.
Yeah, she gave me a kiss goodnight with 6 minutes left in the game.
What kind of a fan is she? No, she was
Not
the smart
much.
one.
It was really funny. My wife was out watching the game, and at halftime, we had the multi-view on YouTube TV, and they showed Drew Timme on Gonzaga. She's like, "He's still there?"
Yeah,
I was like, "Yep, he's still
That's
there."
probably how a lot of people
hasn't
feel
he
about-
been there since we met? I was
Probably
like,
how a
well,
lot of
not
people,
quite, but
probably how a lot of people feel about Race Thompson, who has been in school since you guys met. It's
well, that is true. Yes.
And another guy who seems like he's been around forever, Jamison Battle, just entered the transfer portal.
Yeah,
I saw that he entered. I was like, because he played. I forget where he played. Someplace in the Colonial,
Washington.
George Washington.
Yeah. George Mason.
Was
George
it not?
Mason?
Was it Mason or George Washington?
No, it was one of those guys.
James
It was
Madison.
You went George Washington.
Alexander Hamilton? No.
Thomas
Anyone?
Jefferson?
Okay.
So he played in Minnesota for 2 years then, right? So he's going to use his COVID year, I guess.
I guess, but I feel like
Yeah.
I was actually surprised he was
How
back
many times
this
can you
year.
transfer?
If you're a grad transfer, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it once without
As an undergrad.
without any penalty, and then you can do it as a grad transfer. But you can only do it as a grad transfer if the school you're going to has a program that the other one does not. So they're like, you guys will transfer to get a degree, to get a master's in horticulture or something. It's always ridiculous. I mean, or it's a specific business program. at the
Shots
Kelly-
fired at horticulture.
Yeah, horticulture.
Jeez.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to take that as a direct shot at Texas A&M.
Or because IU has so many different master's programs through Kelly. That's why so many.
Apologies to the horticulturists in the audience.
I never said anything bad about it. I just said there's a lot of
college.
college basketball players.
But it's
just
the
ordered
way
a
you
book on
said
that.
it.
Yeah.
It was
you-
very with a lot of disdain is the way that you said it.
I just added that to my Amazon wish list. Now I'm going to have to delete it.
As for transfers, guys, we don't know yet. There are hints about who might leave Indiana, but we're not going to speculate on that. But as far as who Indiana's going to bring in,
we're going after that Ledlam kid.
Yeah, but I mean, they're going after a number of guys. They've been in contact with a number of guys, but there have been times when people are like, "Oh, they're going to get this guy," and then he goes somewhere else. I mean, you never know what these kids are going to decide. What the NIL complicates it even more. Like Nigel Pack winding up at Miami, nobody thought that was going to happen, and then he went and visited Miami and got a huge offer, and everyone thought he was going to be their lead guard. And he was like their fourth leading scorer or something this year.
Bags of cash.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, and it's legal and good for them. They maximize their ability, or their earning potential. But yeah, no idea.
The best players money can buy.
Yeah, we need some of those. I'm all for it.
It's about money.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's not.
Anyway, so yeah,
I fully loaded Lexus.
I don't know yet. I'm sure there will be some coach movement, and that will lead to some decommitments. I don't know if there's going to be anybody Indiana can go get off of that. They've gotten lucky the last 2 years, but who knows if that's going to happen a third time, but we'll see.
Jared fights his depression by hitting the soundboard over and over again so he can laugh.
It was a nuclear surfboard, remember?
That's my favorite one, the nuclear surfboard. What is a nuclear surfboard? I've always wondered that. What is a nuclear surfboard?
Is that who is that that says that? Is that the booster that yells that out or something?
Wait.
It was a nuclear surfboard,
Yeah, that's
remember?
Happy.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's what I thought.
Happy, the true hero of Blue Chips in hindsight, apparently.
Yeah. And wasn't he God, who played him? This guy who was a bad guy in something else too.
Yes.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
he was a horticulturist.
I'm trying to think of what else he was in because he always played bad guys. Anyway.
Well, screw the rest of this tournament. I don't care.
Who do you guys think is going to win? Because I thought going in,
probably
I had
Alabama.
Arizona and Kansas were the teams that I thought looked the best going in, and they both got spanked. I had Houston in one bracket.
The thing about Arkansas, they've got all their talented guys back too. I mean, they're underseeded with all those guys healthy.
Once they got lined up, a lot of people said they're going to beat Kansas. Like a lot of people predicted that once they got lined up against each other.
JT Walsh, that's right. JT Walsh is the guy.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, San Diego. Here's the thing about San Diego State. San Diego State and Alabama is a really interesting matchup because of how San Diego State guards. I mean, if they make any shots, that can be a game. But their offense escapes them half the time, so it could be a chance that they just shoot like 30%. But if they make any shots, that could be a really, really fun game. So
how about Tennessee coming out of nowhere?
I know.
Now they have FAU, and they have Kansas State or Michigan State. Like
one of those teams is going to the Final Four.
Yeah, that region.
They have no offense.
We said, Jared, you and I were talking, and we were answering questions when somebody said, what Big Ten team can make a run? And we both agreed Michigan State was the one because the way they're constructed. And they're a team constructed to win in a tournament. The way they're not constructed for a regular season. And then you see Sissoko stepping up today, and you're like, oh, that's the guy we saw in the first 2 games of the season that disappeared for 3 months. So, and they got shot makers. I mean, and
Izzo.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they've got some.
Gonzaga and UConn have looked good too.
And UConn is the best team I've seen in this tournament as far as how they've played so far.
Wouldn't it be funny if this is the year Gonzaga wins too? And it's just
I don't
think they're good enough, but I mean, look,
everybody else falls
left,
away.
It's like,
yeah. No, I mean, it's like, but the other thing is, I was doing a friend's Big Ten podcast, where he's talking about the Big Ten. And he said, he asked the same question, like what Big Ten team can make a run? I said, Michigan State. He said, which Big Ten team is going to disappoint? I said, it's Purdue. They're not getting out of the first weekend. Like they're not built for a tournament. And
it's so funny. Everybody acts shocked. It's like, just listen to the people who have watched Purdue play all season long.
I'm not shocked they lost in the first weekend. I was just shocked at the team they lost to because of the size differential and all that. We talked about that the other night. That's what was shocking is just how they lost. Or no, not how they lost, but who they lost to, because they were not making it out of the first weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. Now we've lost.
Kicking
the
balls, it'll be Houston.
It's less fun thinking about that.
I know. Well, at least they won't have to beat us on the way. That's the only respite from this. I don't know. Do you think Houston can do it?
I think they can.
The guards
guard.
are healthy.
And they're guards. They have guards.
Dude, that guy Walker is unbelievable. What is his name? Jarace Walker?
Yeah, Jarrett. I think it's Jarrett.
God, he had a stretch last night where was it last night against Auburn? He made this incredible block and then goes down and drains a three. Then he's like bringing the ball up. I mean, he is at that size. That
Titus,
I think he's going to be a top 5 pick. I think.
Yeah,
When I interviewed Titus, he said Houston's been the best team all year. They just haven't played anybody. They haven't been challenged by anybody the way I'd love for them to be challenged by someone before I decide, if they're my pick. But I mean, he said they've been the best team all year.
They're just, I mean, they didn't get a lot from Sasser and Shed in that last game, and they still dominated the second half. They're tough as nails.
Yeah, I mean, Miami is not going to be able to come out and do the things to them that they did to IU because Houston is that times 100.
Yeah, no.
So
it'll be interesting for IU next year without the 2 veteran post players. Does Woody go 4 out? More of a pure 4 out 1 in,
please,
or does he stick with this kind of have a guy who's really kind of a back to the basket guy playing on the perimeter?
Coach is going to enter the transfer portal if he doesn't.
Coach has reached the bargaining stage already now.
Yeah,
we got to worry about coach transfer
because I mean it's kind of with who Race Thompson was and what he meant to the program. It's really hard not to start him.
Right? You could.
He and TJD played well, had good chemistry and everything. And he obviously Race didn't do what he's capable of this year as much as he has done in the past. But
you also might lose TJD if you disrespect Race. Those guys are that close,
Yeah.
So,
no, they're brothers.
I get
so you basically had 2 centers.
Yeah, essentially. And that's what I'm wondering if that changes the lineup moving forward. And maybe Caleb Banks is your 4. Or someone like that.
Well, talk about a team poised for the postseason. If you're talking about Michigan State, who's there for? Joey Hauser. He gets abused defensively a little bit when he's got to guard a post, but he's a pick and pop guy. And so many 4s and 5s are pick and pop guys in the modern game too. Yeah. That could add to Woodson's repertoire too. If he had a guy who could do, that's where we all get mad at Woodson, but Woodson had a guy who had to score at the basket. He had 2 guys who really could score at the basket. And Race hit a couple threes down the stretch. But, yeah, please, go get some athletes, get some long-arm dudes.
Yeah, the athleticism gap between Indiana and Miami was
huge.
Considerable. Yeah.
I'm excited about Caleb Banks, man.
I am too. He needs to. I mean, there are edges on his game that need to be smoothed out, but yeah, I think
sure. But the fact that he, took his minutes and became an energy guy,
for sure.
I mean, he's got some skills. You don't score that many points in Georgia without skills. And even I was impressed. Even tonight, he got the ball and brought it up like his first time out there. Like he didn't show any jitters. I think that guy's got something.
He does.
CJ Gunn will be productive as a sophomore. CJ Gunn.
He could be like
he sticks around.
Yeah, the defensive guy on the second unit.
But he's got
he's
got the aggressiveness. He's just got to learn.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure he wasn't happy with his playing time, but he's a guy close to home. He profiles as the kind of guy who would, but it's it's the new era of college basketball. Who knows? It's not even. It doesn't do any good to speculate because it's like everybody
athlete,
could. So.
Yes. I just look forward to him out there. He played his rear end off when he got in there. Yep. Defensively doing what he can, learn the game this year, and come back and surprise people a little bit with.
He's a scorer in high school that doesn't.
You know what I liked about him too?
Yeah,
he has self-awareness though. Like he recognized he was allowing himself to get sped up. He mentioned that in some media comments recently.
That was why he couldn't hit shots.
That hurt his shot. Yeah. No, I have really high hopes for him.
I do too. Those two give me a lot of hope because those are the type of athletes that I think do project to a tournament level. When you look at this, who's out there playing right now, there's dudes. That dude from Tennessee went off. I can't even pronounce his name, but I mean, they got every one of these teams that's in the Sweet 16 has some guys. The Johnson guy at Kansas State, UCLA's loaded with athletes and length. That the roster construction. The more I think about it, Woodson had to do what he did a little bit because of the roster. He had to keep guys, and then he recruited a couple big time guys in that helped a lot this year, and then it's just got to keep flowing in that direction. But that's how you win. That's the problem up here in this area where everyone wants to fire Painter. Is his roster is built to win a Big Ten championship. It's not built to go as far as everyone wants them to in the tournament because of athleticism.
Guys, we broke 2 hours on this show.
Yeah,
Broke 2 hours a couple minutes ago.
I'm calling
End
it
of the season. Andy, thanks, man.
Hey.
Fun season.
That it was. Lots to talk about in the off season.
Yeah.
Glad you got your
cheer
mic
on the
fixed.
women.
Not a lot.
Yeah,
of,
oh yeah. How do y'all like Andy's new microphone?
I mean,
how about
just in-
Amazon coming through
just-
with
just in
same day
time for-
delivery?
just in time for one last game.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, you sounded good today. You know,
Outstanding.
you sounded
It
good.
Good.
Golden voice, man. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's
that
nice.
was
It
it.
was pure.
The dulcet tones of Andy Bottom.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I will. I will
right.
talk to you guys soon. Good
Let's
luck to
sign
the women's team tomorrow night. They hopefully will have eyes wide open. One of the other 1 seeds got knocked out tonight. So
Yeah,
What?
Stanford.
Are you serious?
Stanford lost.
Ole Miss beat Stanford.
Whoa, that's rare in the women's game.
Yes, it is.
Especially when you're.
Damn, did
hosting
they have an
the-
injury? Wasn't one of their players hurt for
I
Stanford or no?
don't believe so.
Wow. Okay.
Only women's basketball team I pay attention to is Indiana. So,
Jeez.
Yeah. So anyway,
is Mackenzie going to be back?
seemed like
Morin's comments sounded optimistic that she may be able to play. So I certainly hope so.
yeah. I think they're probably weighing. Can you win this game without her and give her that much more
Yeah.
rest or lack of game
Maybe
time?
limit
or,
her minutes
not?
or something.
Yeah. So we shall see. Anyway, all right. Well, I will talk to you guys.
Cool.
See you.
See you guys. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.